Hello, I'm Bill Fox, and this program is about East Brunswick. Tonight we're going to talk trash, or garbage, or solid waste, depending on what term you prefer. This is a subject which has great meaning for East Brunswick. It's been the subject of considerable discussion and controversy in our community, and indeed it is a topic of great interest to our county and our state. Now, I have assembled tonight, I think, a panel of folks who represent almost all the interest in this particular area. I don't expect that by the end of this program we will have resolved anything. Over the past 5 or 10 years, certainly millions of words have been written about the solid waste problem in New Jersey, and I'm sure billions of words spoken about it. And sometimes it seems that we're no closer to a solution today than we were a long time ago. But what we'll try to do in this program is familiarize you with some of the agencies and interests involved in dealing with this in our state, to give you some information on the current state of solid waste management to the degree we can in New Jersey and in Middlesex County. And I hope that by the end of the program you'll be better informed for having watched it. Now let me, at this time, introduce my guests tonight. First is Frank Flower, who is chairman of the Middlesex County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And solid waste advisory committees exist not only at county level but also at state level. And Frank is a member of the New Jersey Solid Waste Advisory Committee and is its vice chairman. He's a resident of East Brunswick, was a member and vice chairman of the first Environmental Commission in our community, and it's a pleasure to have you here, Frank.
Pleasure to be here, Mayor.
You will, during the course of the program, I'm sure we'll slip into jargon. When you hear us say SWAC, what we mean is Solid Waste Advisory Commission or Committee. Next to Frank is Jack Whitman, who is general manager of Edgeboro Disposal and also the mayor of our sister community of Middletown. Welcome to you, Jack.
Thank you.
Next to Jack is Bob McCarthy, who is director of Middlesex County Solid Waste Management. It's a pleasure to have you here, Bob.
Thank you.
And next to Bob is Joe Wiley, who is assistant director for planning in the Division of Waste Management in the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And it's a pleasure to have you here, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor.
And next to Joe is Stan Fisher, who is co-chairman of an organization known as IRATE, about which we'll learn more later.
Thank you for having me, Mayor.
Let's begin with Frank by telling us a little bit about what the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, or SWAC, is, who's on it, and what their role is in waste management in Middlesex County.
Well, as you know, the state is divided into solid waste management districts based primarily on county lines. And each of these districts is required by law to have an advisory council. And it must consist of mayor's representatives, representatives of the collection and disposal industry, and environmentalists. And their job is to advise the elected county officials on what to do about solid waste.
Mm-hmm. How many members are there on the SWAC?
Oh my, I'll have to ask Bob McCarthy that for the numbers now. It's every mayor plus quite a few additional ones. How many is it, Bob?
It used to be 20, in the range of 20, 21 people, but a few months ago the freeholders decided that with the seriousness of the issues and the way they affected all the people in the county, one good way to represent them better was to make every mayor a member of SWAC. So it's about 20 or so plus 25 more at this point. We're close to 50.
Frank mentioned that the SWAC's job, a role, is to advise the freeholders, and the mayors are members of the SWAC. Do I take it then that individual communities don't have a lot of autonomy in decision making in this area?
The actions in solid waste management are, by law, laid on the county. They're really structured around the county structure. And then this Solid Waste Advisory Council is one of the ways that communities can communicate with the freeholders, influence the shaping of policy, and communicate with the freeholders. The other ways are the normal channels from mayors to freeholders, and from citizens directly to mayors and to freeholders. Those channels are still available.
Frank, do the freeholders take the SWAC's advice?
Sometimes. Sometimes.
You are of course advisory, and they have to make the decision.
Oh yes,
So.
that's very clear, and we understand that. We are just advisory, and they can do with it what they wish. Yes.
Joe Wiley, let me ask you about the solid waste management districts. Are there any districts in the state that are not individual counties?
Yes, Mayor. The Hackensack Meadowlands Development Commission is considered a separate district, as are all 21 counties. So in effect, we have 22 entities, all the counties plus the Hackensack Meadowlands.
Well, if the districts are really the agencies given the responsibility, what then does the state do in this arena?
Well, the state is responsible under the Solid Waste Management Act of 1976 for reviewing and certifying the solid waste management plans developed by the districts. And those plans must provide for long-term solutions to manage solid waste in each district. The State Department of Environmental Protection does have the power to modify the plans if they are found deficient, and to develop its own plan if the plan offered by the district is deemed to be deficient, and then direct the implementation of that plan by the respective district.
Has the department ever taken that action?
Well, there are a number of actions that the department has taken which deal with inadequacies of individual district plans. For example, the department has developed waste flow rules which provide a means to direct solid waste for disposal at facilities that have capacity to handle the disposal needs. That has taken place historically, and I'm sure you'll want to talk more about that as it relates to Middlesex County in particular. Until fairly recently, the state had taken the position that counties were the implementing agency, planning and implementing agency, and the state would not interfere in that process unless the plans were deficient and there were no alternative but for the state to develop its own plan. Last January, this January, in fact, our commissioner determined that 4 counties had deficient plans and required some kind of intervention on the part of the state. And in fact, that intervention will relate to relieving problems of Edgeboro landfill in Middlesex County. We can pursue that later. But it has been a recent development that we see the state directly intervening.
Oh, we've mentioned Edgeboro a couple of times, Jack. About 2 years ago, I guess, Edgeboro was getting 250 or 300 loads of garbage a day, and today it's hard to get an accurate count, but the estimates are anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 trucks a day entering the landfill. You probably know the exact number. How have you coped with all of this, and what's happening there?
It's been very difficult, as you started to mention. The growth pattern of the activity at Edgeboro has increased dramatically over the past few years. Going back to 1980, comparing 1980 to 1985, we've had a 670-some% increase. In terms of cubic yards, back in 1980, we received less than 1 million cubic yards. 1985, it was well over 7.5 million yards. 1986, we're projecting over 8 million cubic yards of trash coming in. To accommodate this, we've had to expand our operation tremendously. The amount of manpower, the equipment which is required, the size of the operation, the access roads going into the facility, everything had to be expanded many, many times over.
Now, I want to come back in a few minutes to some questions about lifespan of the disposal facility, but Maybe you could describe briefly what Edgeboro landfill is. Is it in terms of, it's not a government, is it a government agency? Is it private? How is it controlled? Who directs it? Who regulates it?
Edgeboro Disposal is a privately owned and operated landfill. Started here in 1953 by Harold and Dan Herbert at the one location there on Edgeboro Road. Has been there ever since. We started off just accepting solid waste from East Brunswick Township, and then as months progressed, we started accepting it from Middletown and New Brunswick and some of the other small surrounding towns, and it remained very, very small for years and years and years, up until the growth pattern which we experienced here in the 1980s. We're very fortunate that the geology there at Edgeboro, where we're located, it lended itself very nicely to environmentally upgrading the facility. Back in 1970, with the creation of the Department of Environmental Protection, all landfills in the state, dumps I guess prior to that, had to environmentally upgrade themselves, at least prepare plans, engineering plans as to how they could do that. Finally, we came up with a scheme there. We're fortunate that we have an underlying clay strata. So the engineers came up with a scheme where we could prevent any lateral migration of any of the contaminants coming from the landfill and progressing down dip in any sand strata, which is located there also. To accomplish this, we have an environmental, the bentonite cutoff wall, we have leachate collection system in track.
Wait, Jack.
Okay.
What's bentonite and what's leachate?
Bentonite, the bentonite cutoff wall, it's a, bentonite is a special clay which is mined out in the Midwest, I guess it is, and Dakotas and out through there. It's a special clay commonly referred to as well driller's mud. It's very unique when it's, they used it in our particular operation to actually dig the trench. It held the walls open. At one point they were digging down about 67 feet with a backhoe, big hydraulic backhoe, and the trench is only 3 feet wide. And we went through various types of stratas, geological stratas, that being the meadow bog and the muds and silts which are found out in close to the tidal rivers there, the Raritan River and the South River. Beneath those tidal marshes are is part of the Farrington Sand Strata, which is a major aquifer here in central Jersey. We're very fortunate that, as I mentioned before, under that is the Raritan Fire Clay. The bentonite cutoff wall goes all the way down through those varying stratas and keys into that cutoff, or into that clay, which prevents any lateral migration. On the inside of that cutoff wall, we have a leachate collection line. Leachate is water, rainwater, snow, any type of water, groundwater, which has come in contact with garbage. It's become polluted. As such, it has to be specially treated. In Edgeboro's case, what we do, we collect all that, put it through a series of 3 ponds for detention and some treatment that actually takes place there. Then from that point in time, we pick it up and it's actually discharged into the East Brunswick sanitary sewer system, and we pay East Brunswick for that service. It's all metered and tested. I think it's tested monthly, where they take the composite samples, whatever the law requires. In addition to those, then we have monitoring wells, 17 monitoring wells around the entire perimeter outside of the cutoff wall, which would detect any contaminants which may have leaked from the inside and had gotten to the outside. Fortunately, so far, those wells have been testing very, very good. We also have some safeguards which are required. On the inside of the cutoff wall, we have withdrawal wells, emergency withdrawal wells. Just in case if one of the monitoring wells were to detect a contaminant, we could activate one of the withdrawal wells on the inside, and we could start pumping any of the contaminants from inside and hopefully reverse the flow and prevent any problem until the wall would be repaired or wherever it was leaking from.
That sounds good. But there's still a lot of garbage going into Edgeboro. Did you ask for it, or?
No, we didn't. Back during the past 3-4 years, landfills have been closing up left and right, not just here in Middlesex County, but all the northern counties. Combe landfill up in Morris County. We've had the tragedy which we had over here with the global landfill, the failure of that particular facility, which required the closing of that. Ham's landfill up North Jersey once again. Then more recently, we had the industrial land reclaiming landfill closing over in Edison. As each one of those landfills, those facilities closed, that garbage had to go someplace. We didn't want those landfills closed. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, I guess it was, just about 2 years ago, I was in court testifying, trying to keep ILR open because I knew of the consequences, what would happen with those 500 loads, which they were presently accepting over there. They would be diverted to Edgeboro, and yes, they were. We did not want the garbage coming there. We knew of the problems, but we had no say in the matter.
Jack, what, with the volume of waste going into Edgeboro, what's the life expectancy?
Very timely. We just had our annual flyover just this past spring. They fly over and they do the topo, and that's a requirement of law.
They take pictures?
They take pictures and they determine the elevations of there. We are restricted to certain elevations by a contour map which we submitted, a design which we submitted back in the 1970s. The remaining life, we have about 1 year left from when those flyover took place back in March, I guess it was. At the rate that we were accepting it back in 1985, and because of the tremendous volume coming in, we had some problems, operational problems in 1985. The annual topo, which I was just referring to, showed that we only had a density of 2 to 1.
Density of?
Density of solid waste, compacted solid waste. For every 2 yards of two truck yards coming through the gate, that's normally compacted into 1 cubic yard in the landfill. Prior years, we were able to get better than 3 to 1 densities. This past year, it was only 2 to 1. So things are closing up much quicker than if we were back with the 1 million or 2 million yards per year, which we had a while back.
All right, with that, let me turn to Joe Wiley. You're in the planning part of the Division of Waste Management. And what is going to happen when Edgeboro closes? How many large active landfills are there, and where does the state go next March?
Well, Mayor, we're very concerned about the answer to that question. There are 12 major landfills operating in the state of New Jersey at this time, Edgeboro being one of those major facilities. Of those, there are only 4 in the area essentially north of Middlesex County, what we all would think of as North Jersey. And those other 3 are in the Meadowlands area. All of those facilities are very large on the scale of the Edgeboro landfill, and therefore they also have certain operational problems. Overall, we see statewide about 2 years of remaining life in these landfills. So obviously there has to be some relief developed within the next 2 years, and we're looking at a couple of basic options for that, one of which would directly affect Middlesex County, and that is to invite the private sector in certain affected counties to develop what we refer to as transfer stations, which are ways to transfer garbage from the collection vehicle to a larger vehicle that can take it long distance, to find other sites that would be available until we see new landfills being developed where there is a need in New Jersey. And the 4 counties that we're proposing to have transfer stations developed in are Union, Somerset, Morris, and Passaic counties, of which 3 are currently relying heavily on, or if not exclusively, on Edgeboro. So that is our direct response to the situation that we see developing at Edgeboro in the time frame that life expectancy might run out at Edgeboro.
You mentioned the possibility of new landfills at some time in the future.
Yes.
Is that still part of the solid waste planning?
Yes, it's also, I stress the most immediate relief, which would affect Middlesex. Overall, statewide, the relief is going to have to be development of new facilities in the state of New Jersey, both landfill and resource recovery, which facilities, resource recovery being a term that we use most often to refer to incineration, burning of garbage for energy value as well as to reduce volume. There are major projects for resource recovery in the planning stages throughout the state. Essex County received the first permit for a resource recovery project early this year, and they're well on their way towards developing that project. But these projects take time. They won't be available within 2 years. It may take 4 or 5 years to go through a major project, all phases of development and construction, and be ready for operation. We have some new landfills that are coming online. Cape May County has developed a landfill which is operational. We recently gave a permit to Gloucester County to develop an in-county landfill. And I could take the next 5 minutes to tell you about the good things and the progress that we see in developing new facilities. But overall, there is going to be a short-term capacity problem statewide that will have to be addressed through some special planning efforts, such as transfer stations, which may have to take the garbage out of state for a number of years until we have facilities in state.
Are there places out of state that might accept our garbage?
We think there are. We have to
We've
be
been,
careful.
unfortunately, been on the receiving end of garbage for too many years, but are there places?
Of course. One can't restrict interstate commerce, we've learned, and I think we'll take that as a valuable lesson. That there are places that are in the business to take it, and on a short-term basis that may be necessary. But we're looking at other ways of accelerating the projects that can be developed in the state. And of course, we hope those projects for Middlesex County will be accelerated because they're also needed long-term.
Okay. Stan Fisher, I know that our rate rose out of the very crisis we've been talking about. Why don't you tell us what our rate is, how it got formed, and what it's trying to do?
Thank you. Independent Residents Against Toxic Environments. We were founded when Wheelabrator Fry was trying to site a garbage burning incinerator on Edgeboro Road. And over the years, of course, Wheelabrator Fry has gone by the wayside, since merged into the signal companies, which has also changed structure. But our wars have changed the concept, the problem. Essentially now, we're fighting on several fronts. Number one, we are trying to extend the life of the Edgeboro landfill by yelling about all of the out-of-county garbage that's coming in here. It was just 2 years ago, not even 6 years ago, that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Whitman, we were only getting about 300 trucks a day going into the landfill. The reason we're down to a one-year life is because of that five-fold or six-fold increase. You said a 670% increase in garbage. That's taken away the life of our landfill. IRATE has joined forces with a statewide coalition and with a regional coalition, the Raritan Basin Coalition, and we've spoken about a long-term plan which stresses very, very heavily mandatory recycling. We've seen it demonstrated where towns can recycle up to 50% of their garbage. And we think if that were implemented immediately, mathematically, if you could double the life of the landfill. And that's one of the things that we're stressing. Beyond that, we are constantly shouting about the odors that come out of the landfill. And the truck traffic on Route 18 and Edgeboro Road, which has created a hazard both to our health and our safety. And we try to work with the township in coming up with not just complaints about the problem, but solutions to them.
What does the citizen opposition think is the direction? And I don't purport to have you speak for everybody who is involved as citizens in watching the solid waste problem, but what's your sense of the long-term direction that these folks would like to see in the area of solid waste?
We've heard some very wacky solutions, of course, but the practical ones and the ones that we think that people will accept, number one, mandatory recycling. It should be on a statewide basis. Mr. Wiley has told us of a crisis that we've got on our hands. And we've said before, if we truly have a crisis, and we in our organization, of course, believe that we do, then we should have had mandatory recycling statewide years ago. At the very least, knowing what the problem is in Middlesex County, we should have mandatory recycling on a county-wide basis. When an incinerator was proposed for South River, hundreds of people took to the streets, blocked Main Street in South River, in opposition to the incinerator. I don't think you'll find one person taking to the street if the county said we want recycling on a mandatory basis. We also think that you have to go back to the source, the producer of the non-recyclable goods. Rutgers has a fascinating program getting off the ground now, recycling plastics. But until that program is successful, I think we have to start looking at the type of garbage being produced and question whether we should allow that garbage to be produced. The analogy has been, there's been talk about egg cartons, for example. They used to be cardboard, paper products, easily recyclable. Now all of a sudden everything is styrofoam. We think that industry should be forced to go back to something that's recyclable. And I don't think anyone, certainly in East Brunswick, certainly in Middlesex County, would oppose these ideas. And I think this is the direction we'd like it to take.
And do you feel that's a long-term solution?
Yes.
It has to. Does that mean the continuation of landfills?
That would mean a continuation of landfills, but on the other hand, you could have 50 incinerators statewide. You would still have to have landfills.
Yes.
For the non-burnables and for the ash that's produced. And of course, the big question being asked about the ash that incinerators produce, is the ash more dangerous than the garbage, the unburned garbage going into the landfill?
Well, Bob McCarthy,
Yes, sir.
I know that Stan has addressed a couple of things that are in a new policy statement that the Middlesex County freeholders have adopted just in the last few days. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that policy statement and the direction that it takes.
Yes, the freeholders have been wrestling with the problem. They have, under state law, the responsibility of planning through my department, developing a plan and implementing a plan that provides for recycling, provides for energy recovery, and perhaps a materials recovery approach beyond what we ordinarily think of as recycling, and that's one of the things we're exploring. And it also calls for landfill capacity to dispose of whatever cannot be burned, cannot be used. And the freeholders have tried to allow first private industry to resolve the problem in resource recovery areas in particular. And that was unsuccessful back 3 and 4 years ago. And then in the last couple of years to allow towns to take advantage of the host municipality benefits that came up under McEnroe law. That for a time appeared to be possible, that it was much more desirable for a town to step forward and say, we would like to host, we'd like to cooperate. And that appeared to be an answer. Then in recent months has turned out not to be. And now this policy statement, I'll mention some of the areas that it addresses, proposes one additional effort as far as voluntary siting of resource recovery. It gives the initiative to the Middlesex County Utilities Authority to deal with the municipalities in attempting to find a site. So that's one of the directions, gives them until the end of the fall, till December, to assess the possibilities and try to find a willing host municipality. That's the immediate action on resource recovery, with a very clear statement on the freeholders' part that if that doesn't produce a site, they know that a burning facility of some kind is going to be needed, and they're prepared to choose a site for the county regardless of willingness or unwillingness.
I don't mean to be facetious, but I'm somewhat puzzled by what having the MCUA involved really will do. Does this mean that they have they could go to some town and say, you know, we'll take your sewage if you'll take the garbage, or something like that. I mean, we'll do your sewage for free if you'll take the garbage. Is it that kind of
No, but there's some good
negotiation
reasons
that might
to
go
look
on?
to an agency like that. First of all of the counties that have gone into resource recovery projects to any extent have created or used an existing authority of some kind, an improvement authority, a utilities authority, or a pollution control authority. It's just commonly done. It's a big project. It requires gigantic financing. And so it's common approach. An authority like MCUA has the capability not only to organize for the construction, but also make contracts for the management. So it's reasonable in that way. I think the final element is the Utilities Authority has wanted a chance. They've seen it as an opportunity to serve the county by providing the service and by using the electric power that can be generated to reduce the cost of sewage disposal. And they believe at an overall gain to the citizens of the county.
But why would they be more successful at getting a town to accept siting of a facility than the freeholders were on their own?
The freeholders didn't really go to try to persuade the towns. Okay, they really said, here's the McEnroe law. It offers benefits. You know what they are, and we'd like to hear from you if you're interested. In this case, here's an agency, an existing agency with some capability, saying we want a chance to try with our neighbors to see if we can get them to agree to serve as host and to allow us to proceed with the project. It has merit.
Well, as most of you know, I think East Brunswick, over a course of 18 months or so, will receive something in the neighborhood of $3 million from host community benefits, which is a kind of tax on every ton of garbage that goes into Edgeboro. And we've been able to do some nice things. There are going to be lights at the high school stadium. There's road projects that we've been able to do. The recreation program for special education has benefited. We've been able to lower the tax rate somewhat. But I don't think there's anybody in municipal government who wouldn't trade the money to not have the garbage.
Well, no illusions about how it might be easy to site a resource recovery plant, Mr. Mayor. It's extremely difficult. It's not just a local problem. It's not a Middlesex problem. It's not a New Jersey problem. This is a critical problem from up above Massachusetts all the way down the coast, the middle of the country, the west coast. Every highly populated part of the country has the disposal problem and the not in my backyard problem. Because, and partly I think it's because every piece of land you might look at is in somebody's backyard. There isn't any more empty land. There's a lot more people than there were 50 years ago, and we're spread out more than we used to be. And it's very, very difficult to find an acceptable site. No question about it.
Let me ask Frank Flower. Both the county and the state SWAC have environmental representatives on
Yes.
as members. What's the general thrust of the long-term solution in the view of the SWAC in the district and at the state level?
The long-term solution at both levels, I think, seems to be the same. It is to maximize materials recovery first. If we could do it, maybe before that we would somehow cut back the amount produced, period. But I don't know if we have at the state or the county level have enough power to do anything about that. But definitely recycle a maximum amount of materials first. Then you would perhaps tend towards a refuse-derived fuel. That is, you may do some additional processing to what's left, depending on the situation, to make a better fuel out of the refuse. Burn that for energy recovery. Could be steam, could be electricity. And what's left over will have to go to a landfill.
Well, what do you mean by a refuse-derived fuel? How does
Well,
that differ from just throwing the garbage in and burning it?
Most of the burning plants that have a long history have been what we call mass burning plants. They just take the refuse as it comes on the truck, dump it into a storage area, take it from there, put it into the burning chamber, to the combustion chamber. Take an hour or so to pass it through, and it burns as it goes. But a refuse-derived fuel removes certain items from the fuel before you burn it. Depending on what the situation might be, you might want to, if possible, to remove some of the chlorinated plastics, which are said to be precursors to some of the pollutants that could be emitted from the incinerators. Or you might remove more of the metals that you couldn't get out by source separation. Perhaps use some magnetic separation, or separate some out of the wet materials, the non-burnables would be removed. It depends on the situation, what you would do. What you would probably, I can view it as some kind of processing before burn, before the mass burn.
Stan, seems to me that, and I don't want to start an argument here, but it seems to me, if I heard what you said correctly, there wasn't burning in the future from the standpoint of those who are very concerned about how we dispose of these things. And yet the SWAC at both levels is saying that we have to go that way.
Well, first of all, I think we have seen a difference in what SWAC has to say about the problem over the past couple of years.
Responsive.
2 years ago, we heard almost no mention of recycling. It was burn it. Let's put up a 2,400 ton a day incinerator and burn it. The latest proposal that came out last week really puts the emphasis on recycling, I think, putting up a regional recycling center. And that part of the plan we think is terrific if it's coupled with mandatory recycling on a county-wide basis. The problem we have with incineration, one of the problems we have with incineration, I should say, is that we are being forced to build an incinerator for a problem that was created for us by the state. And again, I have to go back through history. 2 years ago, we did not have the 3-year life remaining at the landfill. We had much longer than that. I believe it was about a 12-year life. Yeah. And in fact, if we had the same amount of garbage going in now and started recycling, the lifespan would be years and years and years. I won't take out a calculator and figure it out. This would buy us some time. We are not saying that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it will be unsafe to burn garbage. We think by then technology may be right, may have gotten it down. But there are problems today with burning garbage. We see it in Europe. In Sweden, they won't let you build a garbage burning incinerator today because of problems with incineration. We see problems with plants that are open now. We saw in Akron, a plant exploded. Now, we were told that's a completely different technology. But we know that they've had problems in Westchester County with a signal incinerator that's up and operational. And so we do not think there should be any plan for incineration in our county at this time. We think that there are other solutions. We think one of the first solutions should be the elimination of out-of-county waste. We've got a 1-year life left, but if 3/4 of the waste going into the landfill were eliminated tomorrow, you wouldn't have a 1-year life, you'd have a 4-year life left. The plan we read about in the newspaper said that by mid-1987, the out-of-county waste will be eliminated. By mid-1987, so will the landfill. If it could be eliminated by 1987, it could be eliminated in 1986 and should have been stopped in 1984 before it came here in the first place.
Joe Wiley, in your discussion of the state's view of all of this, I didn't detect a lot of emphasis on burning as the long-term solution. Is that still the view of the department?
Maybe you didn't let me give you the
Okay.
full picture. I think we look at 3 ingredients for dealing with solid waste. First, recycling, and I have to agree with Stan that you're hearing a lot more support of recycling at the county level. You're also going to hear a lot more at the state level. We are in support of the basic provisions of the legislation that's being discussed now concerning mandatory recycling. We are supportive of counties that adopt their own mandatory recycling programs, which can be tailored to the circumstances of the county and can be tied into actual projects, such as the one that Camden County has recently developed, which is a very simple type of process that provides for a regional center to collect recyclables and help gain some quality control over the materials so that they will be able to find a market for the materials. So that's the first ingredient. The second is some type of incineration, and I'm not going to get into the debate about whether it's refuse-derived fuel or how it's treated prior to incineration, but there are certain things that basically can be incinerated for recovery of energy where the material is otherwise not usable unless it's processed some other way, such as composting, and there actually are proposals for that in individual counties. So I think in general, the preference statewide has been for burning of the energy to get the energy out, although composting is another alternative where you have a total project that can accommodate composting. And then finally, we have the residue, which is going to require some type of landfilling, both the ash and the non-processable material. And we actually have a whole series of special waste streams that can either be gotten out early in the process or can be dealt with later in the process that may require special facilities. We have to deal with asbestos, we have to deal with tires, we have to deal with vegetative waste, we have a tremendous amount of demolition debris right now with the construction. All of these things are part of the solid waste business, and some of them require very specialized facilities. Hopefully we will see projects devoted to those particular waste streams also, because they can't all necessarily be thrown together in a landfill.
And they can't be, some of those
Nor
things
can
can't
they
be burned either.
Nor can they necessarily be burned.
Let me ask a couple of questions generally for those who would care to answer it. One of the major thrusts behind waste to energy was the perceived economics of it, particularly 10 or 12 years ago when OPEC was at its prime and the price of energy was going out of sight. Now we're in a different period. There are many who say that we'll be back to those days sometime in the 90s. I hope that doesn't happen. But at least for the foreseeable future, it would seem to be somewhat less attractive economically in the energy recovery part of burning technologies for waste disposal. Is that how does that factor into the various plans that are being made?
I could comment, one comment I'd make on that is that it would make it less attractive if that were the only factor, but it happens that at the same time, and perhaps in a related way, interest rates have dropped to less than 50% of what they were in the years you're just back 2, 3, 4 years ago. So that the cost of the plant itself, the borrowing for the plant would be much less. Actually, how all the economics works out in comparison, I'm not sure, but it's not all a matter of lost revenue from sale of energy at this point. It may still be as feasible as it was 3 or 4 years ago.
There's another big factor which, besides the energy, is the alternative disposal. Right now here in New Jersey with Edgeboro, and being as we're economically regulated by the Board of Public Utilities, our rate is very, very low in comparison to the alternative. If Edgeboro were to close, the alternative for East Brunswick and my town, Milltown, would be to probably send it out of state. There you're talking prices of $60 and $90 a ton. Compared to at Edgeboro right now, what we get to put in our, well, with all the taxes, it's $15 a ton. Of that, we only get to put about $6 a ton into our pocket, the rest of it being all taxes. So compare that $6 to $60 or $90 by sending it over to Pennsylvania.
And East Brunswick doesn't pay the full 15 as part of the so-called host community
Correct.
benefit. How does it compare economically with building a landfill from scratch with today's environmental safeguards? Joe, do you know the answer to that?
Well, I have a general feeling out there that we're probably in the $20 to $30 a ton range for some of the newer landfills. Cape May is charging less than that, I believe. They've been in
About
operation.
27, I think, Joe.
27?
I think around 27,
Okay.
28 now a ton.
Well, that's probably maybe where it should be. I believe they started out lower than that.
About 26, I think they started at.
Well, you got me on
No,
that one.
yeah.
The cost of the newer landfills will be considerably more than Cape May, so in that case, I guess the rate would have to be over $30 a ton. It used to be that we had a big debate going on about landfills will always be cheaper than any kind of mechanized facility such as resource recovery. And I don't think that's going to be true in the long term, because the safeguards that you need for a very large amount of garbage going in the ground are getting to be very, very expensive, and the kind of measures that Jack referred to are when you have to start with land that may not have the features, the clay and so forth that he referred to. You're talking about something almost as complicated as building a burning. I don't want to really compare it, but in terms of cost and all the material that goes into it, it gets very expensive.
Second question, did you have
I
something
just
more
wanted
say?
to add that in Westchester County, and we keep looking at that because it's the closest incinerator to home, they've been constantly increasing the tipping fees at the incinerator as the oil prices go down, because the price that they get for selling the steam that they turn into electricity is geared to the price of oil. So as their revenue goes down, they have to increase their tipping fees to meet their budget. There are some towns in Westchester County that are now charging paying $450 per household per year for garbage disposal. The average is in excess of $300 per household up there.
Do you happen to know what price per ton they're getting?
The tipping fee, they would try to tell you, is $30 or $40 range. It's been documented in the New York Times that it's closer to $70 or $75 a ton. And that's before other taxes that people are paying to special garbage taxing districts that they've created. So that the real price probably equates to an average of $100 to $110 a ton.
So what you're all saying is that in the future it's going to be more expensive to dispose of our garbage, whether you do it by landfilling or burning or sending it out of state or shipping it off to the moon.
Or perhaps even, curious as it may sound, recycling. We may decide that it's worth investing money in a plant to produce, to take in mixed recyclables in large quantity, encourage everyone to put out every bottle, every can, all the newspapers, all the corrugated, take them all to one place, sort them, and produce a high-grade product, but actually spend money so that it costs us something. We don't even make as much selling it as it costs us, and yet we're ahead, because it ends up with a cost to us of $6 a ton instead of $30 a ton or $50 or $60. But we'll spend more than we do now, even to do recycling.
I wanted to talk about recycling a little bit, particularly the degree to which it would help. I've heard estimates from various people. Stan, I think, being conservative, sort of gives a number in the middle someplace, but I've heard estimates from, that you can reduce the waste stream by 20% to you can reduce it by 75% by recycling and in varying degrees and complete recycling. Frank, I know the SWAC is focused on this a lot. What's the sense of what can be recovered?
Well, first let's look at the state objective. That's the Office of Recycling and DEP objective, is 25% of the municipal solid waste by weight. And you look at some of the data, municipalities, of course, when municipalities do this, they apply for grants from the state, tonnage grants, so they indicate how much they've recycled, and then you can get an idea of what percent. And most of them, of course, are very substantially below the 25 now. One of the best is Montclair, Jean Clark, who's the president, I guess, of the Recycling Forum, does an excellent job, but she has not been able to reach 25%, even in Montclair. However, if she could recycle her leaves, they haven't been able to do that, they don't have the place, she would easily reach 25%. Leaves alone, by weight, or even by volume even more so, take up a tremendous percentage of waste in some of our local, our residential municipalities.
Oh yeah, we've been composting our leaves here for many years now.
Right.
Can I join in on that one? Middlesex County has really gone a long way on that one. At this point, only Perth Amboy and Carteret are without composting systems and programs for their leaves. And I learned about the significance of this from the person that Frank's talking about, Jean Clark, because she was reporting again and again that the leaves in Montclair were 11% of the whole year's waste. I ended up saying, we've got to get 100% of the leaves out of the waste stream. That's how we're going to win this recycling game. We get the leaves, now we're working on the concrete. Next thing we got to work on all the wood and garden waste. We can get more than half of all of our recycling is going to come out of those kinds of materials. The other third to a half is going to come out of household recycling.
Stan?
That's the way we're going to get it.
I believe Woodbury, they've told us, has hit 50% recycling.
It's a peculiar thing. There's a Montclair and a Woodbury. There's a handful of towns around the state that give out the signal that we've done it and anybody can do it. And they've been giving that signal for anywhere from 3 to 7 or 8 years, and nobody else does it. There seems to be, in a few places, a combination of leadership, a cohesive community, things I don't understand, but it doesn't seem to spread.
It does have to be mandatory, though.
Well, but those people even go to mandatory after they've gotten good programs going. It doesn't seem to spread. The county-wide, we're at 9%. We have towns that do a lot, like East Brunswick, very significant contribution. Towns that do relatively little. Towns that do nothing as a town but make a tremendous contribution because their citizens haul newspaper and collect all over the county and take it to Edison Sound.
Frank?
Yeah, I'm paid, my pay comes from Rutgers University, where I teach solid waste management. And one of the courses, in fact, I'll be there tomorrow in Camden County, is a resource recovery course, a recycling course for municipal officials, municipal workers. And we have had this course a number of times. We do it with the Department of Recycling in Newark. And we took 2 of the classes to Woodbury. And it's true, Woodbury does an excellent job. They have mandatory recycling. They use the workers from the city to do the collection, same ones who collect the garbage. They have enforcement. They have an enforcement officer who goes around and actually checks the garbage. But the thing you have to look at, any of these communities give you those high numbers, find out what they're basing it on. They're not basing it on the whole town, you will find. They're generally basing it on a certain section of the town, a certain part, such as in Woodbury it was the homeowners, say residential, single residential home area primarily. And they took some of the commercial. But as I recall, no industrial was included, nor was, say, the hospital. There's a big hospital there. And there are certain segments of the town you'll find not included at all because they're too difficult to recycle. So to get the total picture, you really have to add that in. But Woodbury, is no question about it, is a leader in recycling, material recycling by a source separation here in New Jersey. But you don't always get the total picture for the total town when you get these numbers. You get it for a certain fraction of it. And they are good. And we hope to sort of greatly improve here in Middlesex.
Bob, I heard what you said about subtracting things from the waste stream like leaves and so on. But if we take the leaves out, if everybody takes the leaves out and puts them in a compost pile, isn't that just another name for a landfill for leaves?
No, not at all. The experience with the, pardon me for coming on that way, but the experience with the compost facility in Edison, on Rutgers property in Edison has really been very exciting. Edison itself did an excellent job of publicizing articles in the paper with maps, and big signs at the distribution sites, and they had citizens lined up long lines of cars waiting to get to the piles of finished compost, loaded in their cars. And the Cadillacs and the Lincolns and the VWs were all there, and people were shoveling into the trunks. They were using a product. We turned garbage into a product of very simple technology. We had guidance from Rutgers. The places that have had problems with leaf composting have done it carelessly or without knowledge, and doing it with the advice that we had and the guidance, we've not had odor problems. We produced a good product. The help of the State Office of Recycling, a shredder machine that broke it down finally and screened it into small pieces. It's terrific. It really was the way you should go with recycling. Item by item, pick your material, go after it, and I think we've solved that one.
Let me ask about the short-term future. Edgeboro reaches capacity next March. The transfer stations are going to be in other counties. what thinking is there about what Middlesex County is going to do?
I know.
I want that specifically because that affects East Brunswick.
Sure.
I mean, my hope has always been that in one of the host community benefits should be that there's some corner of the landfill be reserved for East Brunswick's garbage for the next number of years, so that we don't have to haul our stuff to Maryland or burn it at outrageous fees or whatever.
Right.
But it doesn't even look like that's going to happen.
We all said right at the beginning, the first thing to do was cut the out-of-county waste out of this flow to Edgeboro. The freeholders have given instructions to John Hogan, the county council, to go the road of interdistrict agreements. We haven't wanted to. It always seemed like the worst thing in the world when the waste had been forced on you to go back to the county and offer them an agreement to continue to come for a day, much less a period of months. DEP has said to us again and again, the only way we can support you, the only way we can support you in court is if you offer agreements with deadline dates and reasonable times. On the current circumstances, the freeholders have instructed John Hogan, County Council, prepare those agreements, get out to the counties and negotiate. And that process is underway right now. We're not waiting a day. We're moving immediately on that. So the first effort is to cut back on the out-of-county waste. And you've heard about the effort to get transfer stations coming in. So that's our biggest move, to save Edgeboro remaining capacity for Middlesex County.
I might add to that, Bill, we, now being the State Advisory Council on Solid Waste Management, has met with the commissioner. Our new commissioner, incidentally, is very much interested in this area, and he wants to meet with us about quarterly. And some of the last discussions we had, he threw out to us, what do you think of reopening some old landfills? They haven't been properly closed yet. We can reopen them. We can use get extra high tipping fees, of course, put extra money aside for closing them properly, and have additional space for the refuse. So I kind of suspect that this will be a policy they'll be looking to follow, because out-of-state is very expensive and very tenuous. Although New Jersey is going to Western Pennsylvania, Philadelphia is sending some of its waste to Baltimore, and now down to the Carolinas, I'm told, may have to go. Very difficult problem.
Yes, Stan.
It's ironic that we're talking in terms of sending our garbage out of state, and yet we still have New York garbage coming into the Edgeboro landfill. I believe approximately 10% of the waste going into that landfill is coming from New York. Now, the courts in South Jersey found that they were able to exclude Philadelphia garbage because
on a public health issue.
they had a crisis.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have a public health and safety problem. We are averaging approximately 1 accident per week at Edgeboro Road and Route 18 involving a garbage truck. Certainly our health is in danger from the air pollution going on around there, and we'd like to see the out-of-state garbage excluded. We'd like to see the DEP not sending us the unspoken garbage, such as muck from the Delaware and Raritan Canal that occasionally comes here, and garbage of that nature we'd like eliminated.
On that note, I'm told that we're just about out of time. I want to thank you all for being with me tonight. I've found your comments interesting, and I hope that those people who are watching have also. So thank you all.